The second reason I felt it was important to get rid of all of the music is that I was increasingly becoming aware of the fact that there are two kinds of wisdom in this life. There is godly wisdom, and then there's worldly wisdom. Now, godly wisdom is good and it's true, whereas worldly wisdom is not. Worldly wisdom isn't really wisdom at all. I wish I had an official definition of what worldly wisdom is, but I would simply define it as the prevailing beliefs within a human culture at any given time in history. Now, the way that worldly wisdom forms and the way that it becomes prevalent within a human culture is through something called osmosis, or unconscious learning, and the force of the herd instinct. Human beings, we have to understand, are intensely social beings. In fact, we're hypersocial beings. We have this intense desire to connect and to form relationships and to feel community with the people around us. And so that we might feel that connection, we have this desire to conform to the people around us. We conform our speech and our ideas and our behaviors to our neighbors so that as we begin to mirror one another, we feel this bond with each other, we feel the sense of community. There's a brilliant episode of Seinfeld that will help me to highlight this phenomenon. So in this episode, Mr. Pitt, Elaine's boss, starts eating a Snickers bar with a knife and fork. This is very unusual behavior. Elaine has not seen this before. But after she sees it, she then tells George. George, then wanting to conform to this brand new thing, starts doing it too. George's boss then sees him doing it during a meeting, and so he starts doing it too. Someone else sees him doing it on the street, and so she starts doing it as well. And this continues until by the end of the episode, everyone within this community in New York has started mirroring one another in this respect. They have all conformed to this brand new behavior of eating a Snickers bar with a knife and fork.
Look, she's cutting up an almond joy.
I just don't get it.
You know, I saw someone on the street eating M&Ms with a spoon.
What is wrong with everybody?
Look, they're doing it. They're all doing it.
What is wrong with all you people? Have you all gone mad?
This is genuinely how ideas and speech patterns and behaviors become established within a culture, through osmosis and through the force of the herd instinct. We are unconsciously adapting our speech and behaviors and ideas all the time to reflect and to mirror the attitudes of those around us so that we fit in with them, so that we feel included and connected to them, and so that we feel a part of the herd in which we live. And this is how worldly wisdom forms. There are things that people say and do and believe today, and they have no idea why, because they haven't consciously gone out to learn these things. They've simply absorbed them from the culture around them, and they have started to mirror and reflect the attitudes of the people in their community. So what everybody else believes, so they believe it too. And so powerful is this herd instinct that often people would rather believe a lie that makes them feel included than they would take on a truth that makes them feel excluded. They would rather be wrong but fit in than be right but be left out, if that makes sense. That's how strong this instinct is. In fact, we will do things that are completely senseless, that make no sense at all, as long as it makes us feel a part of the herd. I'll play a couple more clips that highlight this phenomenon because I just find this really fascinating to watch.
To answer that question, we set up a hidden camera experiment to see if this woman would stand up at the sound of this tone, simply because everyone else is. You might be thinking you'd never go along with this. Or would you? After just 3 beeps, and without knowing why she's doing it, this woman is now conforming perfectly to the group. But what happens if we take the group away?
Elaine, please.
Okay, now she's alone. The crowd is gone and nobody is watching her, except our hidden cameras. What do you think she'll do? She's now conforming to the rules of the group without them even being there. Now, watch what happens when we introduce another outsider who doesn't know the rules.
Listen up for a new appointment.
Have a seat, and they'll be out in just a couple minutes.
Great,
Thanks so much.
Why this day?
Everybody was doing it, so I thought I was supposed to.
Think she'll teach the new guy what to do? We kept the cameras rolling as more unsuspecting patients arrived. And slowly but surely, what began as a random rule for this woman has now become the social norm for everyone in this waiting room. Here to explain what's going on in their brains is Jonah Berger of the University of Pennsylvania.
This sort of internalized form of herd behavior is part of what we call social learning. Starting at a very early age, when we see members of our group perform a task, our brains literally reward us for following in their footsteps.
When I saw everybody stand up, I felt like I needed to join them. Otherwise, I'm like excluded. Once I decided to go with it, then I felt much more comfortable.
Conformity is how we become socialized, but it can also cause us to develop bad habits or repeat past wrongs.
And it's why even this rebel, who wasn't standing for any of this nonsense, eventually joined the ranks. And the only thing more shocking than seeing how easily conformity affects the way you act is that similar forces are subconsciously shaping the way you think right now.
The gentleman in the elevator now is a candid star. These folks who are entering, the man with a white shirt, the lady with a trench coat, and subsequently one other member of our staff, will face the rear. And you'll see how this man in the trench coat tries to maintain his individuality, but little by little, he looks at his watch, but he's really making an excuse for turning just a little bit more to the wall. Now we'll try it once again. Here's the candid subject. Here comes the candid camera staff, 3 of them at least. And this man has apparently been in groups before. Now, here's a fella with his hat on in the elevator. First he makes a full turn to the rear and Charlie closes the door. A moment later, we'll open the door, everybody's changed positions. Now we'll see if we can use group pressure for some good. Now, in a moment, on Charlie's signal, everybody turns forward. Notice they take off their hats. And now, do you think we could reverse the procedure? Watch.
The pressure to conform socially is just relentless. It's a barrage that's happening all the time, trying to get us to fit in and to mirror and reflect the attitudes of the society around us, to fit in with our culture. In those clips, some people tried to fight against it for a while, but even they were overwhelmed in the end. It's a very, very powerful force. And this is why, for example, 20 years ago, almost nobody believed that gay marriage was a desirable thing at that time, almost nobody. Whereas today, the prevalent wisdom of our time, the worldly wisdom of our culture, is that gay marriage is perfectly fine, is good even. Now, did that change happen because everybody went out and studied the science for themselves and came to their own conclusions about homosexuality? No. The changes happened simply through osmosis and the power of social conformity. People simply adapted their view to mirror the attitudes of the people around them in response to social pressure. A few years ago, nobody believed that transsexual women were actually real women, whereas today the prevalent worldview is that they are. Again, did that change happen because everybody got into the science of it and started understanding it for themselves? No. It became the prevalent worldview, the worldly wisdom of our time, because of the power of social conformity and peer pressure. You have to understand that such is this force of social conformity that if everyone started saying that black was white and white was black, a great swathe of people would fall in line with those ideas too and would start parroting them in their community. They really would. And if you read Trench, or if you watch the upcoming series, you'll understand why the need to conform socially is especially prevalent amongst the political left. But I'll get into that another time. Now, as I reached the age of 22, I became aware of the influence of pop culture to set the course or the agenda for worldly wisdom. A lot of the ideas that become mainstream worldly wisdom in the end originates in pop culture. It starts with pop stars and it starts with influencers who work in TV and in film production and in advertising. And through their respective mediums, they broadcast their message into the world and into people's minds. They effectively say, this is the thing that we all currently believe in. All of the rich, cool, glamorous people all currently believe this latest idea. And therefore, you should believe it too. Adapt, change, become like us, think like we do. Otherwise, you're going to be left out in the cold. You're going to be excluded. You're going to be on the wrong side of history. You'll be left behind feeling like a dinosaur with all of your antiquated ideas and oldie worldy morals. Become like us, your idols. Become like us, the cool kids. And that pressure keeps on building through pop culture and through mainstream media and through film and TV and music. And then your friends start adapting and they start conforming to the prevailing attitudes. And so that builds the pressure some more on you until eventually great swathes of society are saying, you know what? Gay marriage is good and trans women are women and you're a bigot if you think otherwise. Well, nobody wants to be a bigot. And so all of a sudden culture has changed for no other reason than we all just wanted to fit in and reflect and mirror the herd around us. Now, I realized around the age of 22 that many of the songs that I was listening to were not openly blasphemous, and they didn't talk about having the devil inside them or anything like that, but something more subtle was happening. They were simply filled with this worldly wisdom. The music that I listened to over and over and over was barraging my mind with worldly wisdom. And because I'd just come through that dark period, around the age of 22, 23, I was really getting into this new phase of life now, where I was beginning a search for real truth and for real wisdom. In fact, that really began to consume my life around that age. I began this hard pursuit of the truth. I wanted to know what was real and what was good and what this life was all about and what was worth living for. I was obsessed with this at this time. I was trying to figure out what I believed about life. I knew I was still young and I didn't want to merely inherit my parents' beliefs. I wanted to know for myself what wisdom was and what truth actually looked like. And so immediately after that period of darkness, around the age of 22, 23, I then entered into this new period of reading and questioning and studying and asking all of these difficult questions of God. I began to look at Christianity intellectually to see if it could stand up to real scrutiny. I wanted to know that if God was good, then why was there pain and suffering in the world? And why do babies die and get cancer? And what about evolution and what about dinosaurs? Did God have answers to these questions? So I began investigating all of these big questions around that time because I was aware that at that age, I still didn't have any clear ideas yet. The world was still a bit fuzzy to me. So I was reading ravenously, I was in my Bible, I was reading all kinds of other books, and it was during that period that I came to this conclusion, that whatever truth and wisdom I was currently searching for in that moment, pop culture didn't have it. And the secular music I was listening to was only going to be a pollutant and a distraction to whatever it was I was currently trying to find. Whatever truth and wisdom there was to be found in the world, I knew that I wasn't going to get it from these people. People who were simply parroting worldly wisdom in their lyrics, and who were stupefying their brains with drugs, and who were so lost themselves that sometimes they even killed themselves. I knew that these people didn't have the answers. They didn't have the answers I was looking for, and listening to them was only going to confuse my search. And therefore, in that formative period, where I was trying to pursue the truth and trying to figure out what I believed, I thought it would be beneficial to close out all of that noise completely and just laser focus on what seemed good and true and noble and pure and beautiful. And so that's the second reason why I thought it was a good reason to throw away all of my music at that particular time in my life. The Bible says, "Do not be conformed to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind." If you're not deliberately seeking to transform your mind in righteousness, the default, the Bible says, is that you will automatically become conformed to the pattern of the world around you, in your thoughts and ideas and in your beliefs. Through the herd instinct, through osmosis, through the power of social conformity, you will merely come to mirror the society around you in your attitudes and ideas. And it will happen without you even realizing a lot of the time. You'll just start thinking and behaving like everyone else in your herd. Now, the young are particularly susceptible to this, it's got to be said. The young are more malleable and more flexible and more impressionable. They're more open to peer pressure, you could say. That's why they're called your formative years, because you're still literally forming the person that you're going to become. And as you form, you can either be conformed or you can be transformed. And so again, being 22 or 23, I was kind of aware of this, and I decided to lessen my exposure to things that would seek to conform me so that I might instead be transformed. And now, dear brothers and sisters, one final thing. Fix your thoughts on what is true and honorable and right and pure and lovely and admirable. Think about things that are excellent and worthy of praise. Keep putting into practice all you learned and received from me, Paul says. Everything that you learned from me and saw me doing. Then the God of peace will be with you as you walk through this life.